Okay, so now the moment you have all been waiting for, and it's the riskiest part of the presentation, which is a live demo by Daniella.
No pressure. Hey, Daniella, I'm switching you over right now.
Okay, thanks. So yeah, as Michael said, we're kind of in the process of putting all the different pieces together and getting the original scanner infrastructure built into PopMedNet. And so some of the things that you're seeing now will be things that we'll be swapping out with PopMedNet. And I think that over the course of the next coming months, probably by our next quarterly update, there'll be some great things that are happening, and as far as we understand it, the future distributions of PopMedNet will include the pSCANNER adapter. There will be, if other networks would be interested in participating, the code will be available, as will the pSCANNER adapter when they update their DataMart client. So I'm going to, because there's so many great visualizations that you just saw that are not incorporated into this, I'm actually going to focus more on the workflow aspects of Scanner and how Scanner actually deals with the governance of distributed computing. I also wanted to make it clear that the nature of the Scanner and pSCANNER adapters and the architecture is such that the expectation is that no sites will be sharing any data that is not aggregated already. So only summary statistics and counts are incorporated in what is getting sent to the portal. And the thing that's useful about that is that we actually have the capability to do studies fairly quickly with IRB approval in advance. Most of our participating sites have already signed IRB approval for sharing summary statistics. Oops, sorry. So I'm just going to go to sort of the end product that you would see if you were running one of the two kinds of analyses. So this is a history of one of the products, and we have two basic types of regressions. We have a library that Xiaoshen created called GLOR, and the Oceans library. They represent two different analysis paradigms. The GLOR library estimates a single model across all of the different sites as if all of the data were pooled centrally. Oceans creates is more similar to what's been done in Mini-Sentinel, and I think what is anticipated in the rest of PCORNet, where each site estimates some kind of model and sends the results back up centrally. So let me give this one first. Oops. Okay, I'm gonna have to go back. Sorry, live demo. Okay, so here's the interface that you would use to estimate the site. So this particular study was inspired by the fact that we had two parallel medication therapy management studies happening at UCSD and at one of the USC sites, Altamed. So they were both conducting medication therapy management studies, slightly different interventions, and so we were interested in simulating how those kinds of analyses would work across the different partners. So this is the Oceans case where each site should be estimating a different analysis, and this is the GLOR case. You can see it's the exact same interface, but this is the collaborative analysis. So the interface is maybe similar to some of the user-friendly interfaces you've seen for statistical packages, where you specify what the variables are that you would like to include in the analysis, and those variables are going to be displayed and estimated across all the different sites. So what's going to happen now when I press the analysis button here is that now each site is going to get a package that is instructions on how to do computation. So it was so fast, we need to slow it down so the demo is more dramatic. But so what happened fairly quickly is that in 2.6 seconds, each of the participating sites received an analysis instruction. Over a series of iterations, about 16, they sent summary statistics back to the aggregator node. The aggregation statistics were used to estimate an intermediate model. The model came back, and this is the result with each of the coefficients, and also the sort of variables that you would see in a table 1 of a publication, so the mean and standard deviation of each of the variables. So that I think that was sort of something that distinguishes us from the different networks, and this is the end product of a series of steps. So I'm going to go back through some of the things that may seem a little bit more tedious, but are actually the most onerous part. And some of the things you'll hear tomorrow is how we're going to be improving on all of this. So when you are setting up a study like this, in the real world, it doesn't just work like you run an analysis against all the different sites. You actually have to go through a set of approvals and identify the investigators. And so what pSCANNER has is a workflow that walks through the different phases of IRB approval. So when we first set up this study, we entered in some critical information. Again, this is not so different from what you would do if you were entering data into your EIRB. So the future state of this might be harmonizing with the EIRBs at the different sites. There is a data model for EIRBs that we could use, and I think it's in use with IRB share, and that data model is something that we could harmonize with our IRBs if that was something that the streamlining group thought was important. Anyway, this is sort of setting up the critical aspects of the study, including the sites that are participating and the methods that would be going into the protocol. You also have the ability to change the staff, and importantly manage the different kinds of protocols. So in the case of an observational study, the protocol is more or less what the data set is and what the methods are, and some information about how the data will be stored. And this is we have these two methods, synchronous and asynchronous, and the role of each person in the study. So that if there was some requirement that people would have to handle identified data, you would be able to check and make sure that they had all of the HIPAA approvals and all of the HIPAA certifications and any human subjects research training that they would need. Certainly, some of our IRBs required that even for handling de-identified data, there would be that kind of handling of certifications. So that step, these different steps are how we would actually approve these different procedures for the sites. And then also there's optional opportunities to manage documentation. We have a prep to research that is similar to what you would do with a I2B2 or Shrine, and then the analysis interface, as well as an ability to specify a data set. So our common data models first require us to create a data set that corresponds to the particular kind of analysis approach that we're taking. So this study has only one data set, the medication therapy management data set, and I'm not going to walk through all these different steps. It's just to show that there's actually a user-friendly interface here that allows us to create the data sets, set the initial population, the start date and the end date, go through and continue to add variables over time to our data set. So this data set makes it walks the user through creating a particular kind of data set that's consistent with the analysis, and you basically build up your data set in the pane over here, and continue through the procedures until you have generated some platform independent specifications, kind of like what Michael was describing, and those specifications are then transported to a translation engine that can create platform-specific representations. So this is the process by which you would say, this is what the data set looks like that I'm going to use in my analysis. And you can manage different instances of it if you're the person that is responsible for posting a data set and exposing it to the network. This is the part of the interface that would say, oh, okay, here's how the scanner portal is going to find the data set that you are going to analyze in this study. So in order for the portal to work, it has to have the instructions, know where to pick up the data set, and how to do the different steps in the analysis. And there's different kinds of network administration tasks, and as well as profiles that is from mine to manage. One thing that we're working on with a new proposal is putting into place a privacy budget. So if it's funded, we're collaborating with people that have been working quite a bit on differential privacy in order to assign each investigator a hypothetical budget on how much their queries would be exposing privacy risks within one of the data sets that has been posted to the network. And that was something that was Lucilla's idea, I think, a couple of years ago, and is finally actually coming to fruition. if we're funded. So this is sort of the back end of the workflow. It takes into account all of the different steps that go into creating a study. And when we're finally kind of done marrying all these different pieces together, we should have a really nice user-friendly experience that allows any members of PCORNet to have access to these kinds of data analysis tools, as well as the visualization tools. And the portal would also have, in addition to the GLORE and Oceans library, we would have things like the Odyssey library that you saw before. So all of the participating sites would be able to pretty easily queue up those kinds of visualizations that were created by other developers. So the idea behind this is that we're not the only people that are developing methods. We want to have open source repositories that are interoperating with our libraries, so that any user can come to a scanner portal and propose a study to different potential collaborators, select methods from libraries that are controlled in a way that allows us to adopt these platform independent standards and send instructions to the different sites. So, and then all of the different approvals are also attested to during the process. So that's sort of the end of this demo. I can probably, if people have specific things they want to explore, I can try to display them, and hopefully they won't break.
Great, thank you. So any questions for Danielle?
I have two questions. One is, you said that GLORE was a model that assumed the data was sort of pre-merged and then run. So one of the things in the iDASH scanner that I wished we could have done was do matching between the cohorts of exposed to maybe other sites that could have had a matching patient and then not drop the case. So that's one question. And the other is, at the VA, I would say the number one concern about the client is something going to come into my data set and run something without my even... So when you talked about exposing the data set, if you could enlarge a little bit more on how that's...
Sure. So the first question, I will definitely defer to Xiaoshen and Xuan on this. This notion of trying to be able to do vertically partitioned analysis without having to share patient-level data is something that we can do, and this is another part of the same proposal that we put together in order to get a sense of how we can apply algorithms that sort of already extant in the literature to conduct that kind of vertically partitioned analysis. There's some hurdles that we have to overcome, and working with Jason a little bit on this is sort of applying some sorting techniques in order to, say, narrow down the patients that are in common across the different sites using some sort of, I shouldn't say well-known, but at least sort of fairly reasonably well-established approaches to privacy-preserving encryption, so that you get a similar identifier across different sites for the same individual based on identifying information that you retain locally. So that's a real area of growth, I think, for us. Some important opportunities, I think, especially for things like the claims databases that we want to integrate with going forward. We've been working a lot with the payers, and that is one of the key things in phase 2 is trying to work out how can we create a network-wide identifier that would let us do that kind of vertically partitioned analysis without exposing each other to PII. So I'm very excited about that being one of the activities that we work on, so that we're really able to get the kind of results that you would get when you have the vertically partitioned data, where your outcome might be in one site and your covariates are in another site. So I forgot your second question.
It's about exposing the database.
Right. So one of the reasons that we have this step of creating the data set as separate from the data harmonization that we do to get the data into the PCORNet data model or the OMOP data model or whatever the model du jour is with doing these data processing steps, you can actually create a fully de-identified data set, and that way you don't have any PHI in that data set according to either statistical standards or the standards that are native to HIPAA in terms of getting any dates out of the data. And for certain kinds of methods, and not all of them, for certain kinds of methods, like logistic regression, if you're aligning your data to an index date, you don't need to actually know exactly what the date was. You can just reference it. You can just align the data to a particular non-identified piece of protected health information and take out the PHI. So that is one of the reasons why we have this step, is that you can do a lot of useful analysis once you've created a data set that is de-identified, and you're only exposing that to be queried in order to generate the summary statistics that you need to do the analytics. So does that help?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.